Using the custom element, let's level up our Webflow components. We'll start by making this visual component that we can drop in any section and can choose if we want to show or hide an image or maybe a looping video. If we want an overlay, what the opacity on that overlay should be, depending on the video or image we uploaded. And we'll learn how to configure all this. So let's add a custom element. I like to start all my global elements with G underscore so I know it can be used across multiple sections. I'll give this visual wrap and I'll give it a cover utility so it's absolute to its full parent and that parent is set to relative. We can just drop this inside anything and the size will be set from the parent. And inside of this, whenever our images or videos are still loading in, we usually just see an empty space here, but it's good to have something to show that something's going to be in this spot. So to do that, I can drop a custom element and using the Lumos Chrome extension, I can hit my right arrow key and I'll just call this background. It just returns the class of the parent by doing that. And I'll just give it the same absolute utility. So it's covering its full parent. And I'm going to throw a background color of my swatch current color. So it's its parent's font color. That means in light mode, it's dark. And then if this section was in dark mode, this box would be light. And then I can just turn its opacity down. So we just have sort of this ghosted kind of outline there, letting you know that something's coming in. So I'll also go ahead and add an image element in here. I'll hit my right arrow key. I'll call this image, give it the absolute utility. I have my all image tag set to cover so that they don't get stretched. And I'll drop in another custom element here. I'll call this video. I'll give it the utility and I'll give it a tag of video like so. Now, normally whenever we set a video, we would have to give it the fit cover so it covers the full thing. But I've styled the video tag to already have this. That way I don't have to reapply it to each video. So it's just a little cleaner and a little faster. So now that we have that set, we can go ahead and add SRC, which is source. And we can use any video URL that we have a direct link to. So I'll use this one and I'll give it an autoplay true. So it starts playing on page load and I want to give it a loop true. So it just keeps repeating and it'll need muted true. Usually for autoplay to work, muted true has to be applied. And I'll give it a plays in line true. So this is for mobile. Usually iOS tries to open these videos full screen when they start playing, and this just prevents that from happening. So now that we have that set, this video will just keep playing and looping, and that's good to go. And sometimes we'll use this visual wrap in the background of an entire section, and we want to darken it so it's not so the text on top is readable. To do that, I'll add a custom element again, and I'll go ahead and give this the visual overlay. And let's go ahead and give this the same absolute utility. So it's on top of everything. And I'll give this just a pure black sort of background color. And I'll turn its opacity down. Maybe like 40% is good. So we can go ahead and make our component. Let's grab this whole visual wrap. Let's create a component here. And I like to use / convention. So it's easier to Command E and search for all related components. So I'll go global visual and create. And now that we have that set, let's grab our image here. I'm going to set this image to be a different, not the Webflow default placeholder, because sometimes that throws errors when that placeholder isn't found on the live site. So I just uploaded my own version of that I'm going to use instead. And I'll go ahead and link this to a field and I'll call this image file. And that way they can choose that per component. Visibility, I'll leave it visible by default because I think most times when using this component, we'll be using an image. So I'll go ahead and set this visibility to be image visibility. And this isn't display none in block. This is actually removing it entirely from the page if you have it set to hidden. So it's very good for performance and making sure nothing's rendered that doesn't need to be rendered. I like to set my images to auto load because lazy waits till you scroll into view and it usually flashes and flickers when it comes in view. I don't like that too much, so I'll let it set to auto. By default, it can pull the alt text from the asset panel, but I still want to link this to a field so they have the option to override that alt text in certain instances if they want. But if they don't set anything, it'll just pull from the panel. Now for the video, we definitely want to set the URL of it to be changeable. So we'll give this video URL And we definitely want to set probably like loop true to be an option. So we'll just call this loop, and that way we can set it to false if we don't want it. Mute it. Maybe there's some instances where we'd want to change that. Usually we'd handle that on click with JavaScript, but I'll leave that set as an option. Plays in line, we probably won't need to change that. Autoplay, maybe we might want to change that if we wanted a video to wait till we click to start playing. So I'll leave that as an option we could adjust from the whole component. Now for this element here, we know that sometimes we might want to adjust the opacity depending on the image or video we uploaded, depending on how bright that image or video is. And most of the time, we're not going to be using this component in the background of a section. So I can leave its visibility set to hidden by default. And I'll link this to a field, and I'll just call this something like overlay visibility. And if we want to be able to adjust its opacity, we can add inline styles because we use the custom element where we set opacity to whatever the default most common is, 40% in my case. And then I can link this to a field, and I'll just call this video or overlay opacity. So we can go ahead and set that. And I believe that's pretty much everything we need. The video itself will probably be hidden in most cases, and we'll only turn it on when we're actually planning to use a video. So I'll just call this video visibility, and that's good. Let's go to the whole component. Let's go to props, and let's start organizing some of this stuff. So the image file can go in a folder called image. The image visibility can go in that same folder. The alt text can go there. The video URL will need to go in a folder called video. The loop should go with the video. Mute it should go there also. Autoplay should definitely go there. Overlay should go in a new folder called overlay. And we'll put the overlay opacity in that same folder. And the video visibility should go with video. So image is the most common element people will use. I'll have that at the top. Video is second most common. Overlay is probably the least common, so that'll go at the bottom. We want some sort of pattern to this. So here I have the image file, then its visibility. I'll start video URL, then its visibility. So it follows the same similar thing. And then all the optional attributes can follow there. And that is looking good. So if we close this out now, per component, we should be good to change image if we want, hide image if we don't want it. Sometimes it's good to have this image, even if you're using a video, because before the video is loaded, you'll see this image in the background, and this can be like a cover to your video. But if you don't have that, you can just remove it. We can show the video, we can change out its URL, we can add our own custom alt text for the image if we want. We can set this video not to loop or autoplay. The overlay, we can show that, and we can adjust its opacity. Now let's take it up a notch by applying this concept to an entire section. I'm going to use the native section element because we'll need this ID field if we ever want to anchor link to it, but custom elements will be used for pretty much anything else. I'm building some commonly used layouts inside the Lumos style guide just to use as a starting point. So I'll give this a generic name like layout 2 wrap for now. And inside of there, we'll have a custom element, and this can have layout to contain, and I'll drop a container sort of utility on top. So it has the padding and everything from variables. Inside that, we can have a custom element, and this will be layout to title. I'll give it the most commonly used tag, which is H2, but sometimes we may want to switch the component to be H1. I'll drop some text in there, and let's go ahead and drop another custom element right outside. And this one's going to have a tag of P, and I can just copy some placeholder text from this and just throw it into that paragraph box. And let's go ahead and give this a class of layout to text. And we're going to go ahead and drop maybe a div in here. This is just going to be to group our buttons together. I won't need to add any extra inline styles to this. Let's give it layout to button wrap. And I'll go ahead and apply flex to this so it aligns and puts everything to the center. And I'll throw a space extra small. And I can just drop a component of a button, and we'll go button with link, and we'll duplicate it. And let's give this one a outline style. And let's go ahead and drop a div in here to hold our text, our title and paragraph together. So anytime we're doing things with conditional visibility, we don't want to use margin or padding on this stuff. We want to use gap. That way, when we hide a piece of text, the space between it hides as well. So this can just be layout to content. And I'll give this a flex, and we'll go vertical, center, and I'll throw on a space of extra small so it matches the button space. And we'll also grab the whole container itself, go flex, vertical, center, and throw in a space of small. And that way it's just spaced apart. On the whole container, I'll throw text align center. And I'll also go ahead and drop my global sort of sub or eyebrow here. And that can go right outside of the content. So that way it's separated from the heading and the button wrap. So we have that set there. Now we might want to set a max width on this, and I like to use CH for that. So it's based on the size of the actual letters themselves. So for instance, if I give this a max width using CH, then when this font size changes, after I lock in the line wrap, that font size changes. I don't have to readjust this line wrap. It's just gonna scale with the actual rim font size. So this is good. I might actually widen it up a little bit to where it can go pretty much full width like so. And that's good on the title, and that's good on the paragraph. Now, once we go to link this to a component, let's go ahead and make this a component right here. I'll call this just layout 2. Sometimes let's grab this title here. Let's link this. We'll call this a title tag, and let's have a title text. And that way we can just reuse this CTA sort of section throughout the site. And let's say that the client changes the text and adds another word in some instances. Well, now this line wrap that looked good on other pages is now broken on this page. So we can give them the ability to dynamically adjust that max width. And our default max width is 23ch. So let's just plug that in here. Let's go style, and let's set a max width, and let's go 23ch, and let's link that to a field, and we'll call this title max width. And now in the instance that maybe they did change the text in this instance and now it doesn't look so good, we can just adjust the max width here for this one component to get it looking the way we want, and everything's good. We can follow that same process for the paragraph in case they shorten it or anything like that. And because we used gap, we could link this visibility on the paragraph to a field so that if they hide it, that space between the heading and paragraph is gone. And we can do the same thing with the eyebrow. So this has visibility. We could just hide, and that's gone. We could hide and show individual buttons, and we can give them all those options to configure. Now, inside our section element, we can drop in our global sort of visual component here, and I'll just paste this right there in the background. Now, if we're using this visual, then we probably want our section to be in dark mode so that the text is light on top of it. So let's go ahead and give this a data theme. And this is just a Lumos attribute where I can put data theme dark. It makes the whole section in dark mode. And I can grab this whole visual, and I might want to add the overlay on by default. And that way that's all good. And then one other thing I might want to do is give this whole container kind of like a min height. Maybe I want it to be like 90 VH tall, so it's filling most of the screen, and I'll probably justify center. So this is like our big CTA section. But what if we don't always want to use it like this? What if sometimes we want to use it without a video and maybe a lot shorter? So to do that, we can just drop in a div, and I'll call this layout 2, and let's just call it base, and let's give it the same cover absolute. So it's just covering its parent, and it's resting there in the background. And I can go ahead and link this to a component field, and I'll just make this visibility the visual visibility. So we're hiding and showing the entire visual. And maybe on this component, we want the visual, but on this one, we don't want it. We can just hide it. And maybe on the one that we don't want the visual, we also don't want it to be super tall. We want it to be auto height. Well, because we used a custom element for our container where we set this min height of 90 VH, we can just go style, and we can go min height, and We'll set 90 VH as our default for most instances of this. And we can just give this a, we'll just call it min height and go ahead and create. And now on this component here, we can just change the min height to be auto, so it starts to hug the actual content itself again. Now we might want to start grouping together related things. So if I head to props, I might create one for section style and create that for min height. I might create one for title, and the tag can go in there. The text can go in there. The title's max width can go in there. Visual visibility could be in its own folder called visual. And I might choose to bring over some of the child controls, like maybe the opacity and the URL for this, whether or not it's an image. I might bring that over to the entire section component so we can adjust that. And one other thing I might want to bring over is whether or not this section is in light or dark mode. So I could just tie this in. We could make dark the default since we've enabled videos backgrounds as the default, but I can set this theme attribute and I can go to props and I can link that to section styles so that in this section here, I might want to change it to light mode, change it to auto height. So all that's still working. Now, if we're using this section right up against another light section, or maybe it's a dark and there's two dark sections, then we actually don't want all that extra space. So our entire container, and we can override these top and bottom paddings by using some Lumos data attributes of data padding top. And this just pulls from Webflow variables. So we have a couple different sizes we can choose from, but I'll set the default and I'll link this to a field called padding top. And I'll go ahead and create, and I'll add one more, and this will be data padding bottom, and I'll link this to leave it as the default top and bottom padding from our Webflow variable, but give them the ability to override it if they need it. And that padding top and padding bottom on our container can be thrown into our section styles like so. So that now if we click off, we have two light sections back to back. We don't want all that much space. We can zero out the top padding, and that feels a lot more balanced. So hopefully you start to see that by using the custom element, there's just really opens up so much possibility here of what we can actually do and things we can configure even through CSS here. If I want reverse layout true, I can just flip the order and make this dark, change the top and bottom. So there's a lot of things we can open up when we set up our components in a meaningful way, where we're not locking ourselves in, but we're giving ourselves the freedom to have a site that'll grow and evolve.